मुफाहमत दो तरफा मामला है। ईरानी सदर मसूद पेशकियान कहते हैं अमेरिका मफाहमती यादाश्त पर अमल करे तो हम भी जिम्मेदारियां पूरी करेंगे। ईरान धमकियों का जवाब फैसलाकुन दिफा से दिया जाएगा। कहा इस्लामाबाद मेमोरेंडम ईरानी अवामी फतह है। ईरान को कमजोर करने का मंसूबा मुतहद होकर काम बनाया गया है। एटमी हथियार बनाने की ख्वाहिश नहीं।
आपने हुर्मुज से बारूदी सुरंगें सिर्फ ईरान ही हटाएगा। ईरानी नायब वज़ीर ख़ारजा काज़िम गरीब-आबादी का कहना है फ्रांस मामले को पेचीदा न बनाए। इस्लामाबाद MOU के तहत बारूदी सुरंगें हटाने का काम ईरान करेगा। इससे पहले फ्रांसीसी सदर ने आपने हुर्मुज से बारूदी सुरंगें हटाने में ताउन का ऐलान किया था। अपने शराकतदारों के साथ आपने हुर्मुज से बारूदी सुरंगें हटाने में ताउन करेंगे।
विफाकी वज़ीर दाखिला मोहसिन नकवी सऊदी अरब पहुँच गए। मोहसिन नकवी सऊदी अरब में आम शख्सियात से मुलाकातें करेंगे। सऊदी हम मनसब शहजादा अब्दुल अजीज बिन सऊद से मुलाकातें करेंगे। मुलाकात में पाक सऊदी मुश्तरका सिक्योरिटी ताउन, सिक्योरिटी अमूर को मजीद बेहतर बनाने पर तबादला ख्याल होगा।
पाकिस्तान का सलामती कौंसिल से फ़लस्तीन में इसराइली आबादकारियाँ फौरी रोकने का मुतालबा। अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा में पाकिस्तान के मुस्तकिल मंदूब आसिम इफ्तिखार का सलामती कौंसिल के इजलास से खिताब। कहा मकबूजा फ़लस्तीनी इलाकों की सूरत हाल इंतहाई संगीन है। इसराइली आबादकारों का तशद्दुद और गैर कानूनी आबादकारियाँ नाकाबिल कबूल हैं। गजा में जंग बंदी के बावजूद फ़लस्तीनियों की हलाकतें जारी हैं। सलामती कौंसिल इसराइल को बैनुल अक़वामी कानून का पाबंद बनाए।
अपोजिशन तनकीद करती रहे, मैं काम करता रहूंगा। जमात इस्लामी को भी चाहिए वो काम करे। मैं कराची मुर्तज़ा वहाब की मीडिया से गुफ्तगू। कहा कोई जमात बाइकआउट करती है तो इसका फायदा जमात इस्लामी उठाती है। अपोजिशन लीडर सिंध असम्बली ने बजट के अलावा हर चीज में बात की है। माजी में लियारी क्रिकेट के मैदान में अपना नाम रोशन कर चुका। लियारी मुस्तकबिल में भी खेल के मैदान में अपना लोहा मनवाएगा। मजीद कहा मैं यहाँ फुटबॉल मैच देखने के लिए आया हूँ। मेरी फेवरेट टीम अर्जेंटीना है।
खैबर पख्तूनख्वा में सरकारी दफातर में जुमा को वर्क फ्रॉम होम खत्म कर दिया गया। नोटिफिकेशन के मुताबिक जुमा अब मामूल के मुताबिक सरकारी वर्किंग डे होगा। तमाम सरकारी दफातर जुमे को मामूल के मुताबिक हाजिरी यकीनी बनाएंगे। फैसला गुज़िश्ता रोज काबीना के इजलास में किया गया।
गुस्ल काबा की रूह तकरीब आज मुनक़िद होगी। बैतुल्लाह शरीफ के अंदरूनी हिस्से को गुस्ल दिया जाएगा। गवर्नर मक्का मुकरमा समेत शाही खानदान के आम अफराद और हरमैन शरीफीन इंतजामिया के अरकान गुस्ल काबा की तकरीब में शिरकत करेंगे। बैतुल्लाह शरीफ के अंदरूनी हिस्से की दीवारों और फर्श को आब ज़मज़म समेत अर्क़ गुलाब और खालिस ऊद के साथ गुस्ल दिया जाएगा।
गर्मी के सताए शहरियों के लिए एक और इम्तिहान। लाहौर में शदीद गर्मी के बायस लेस्को की तलब और रसद का फर्क बढ़ गया। बदतरीन लोड शेडिंग शुरू, हर घंटे बाद 1 घंटा बिजली बंद होने लगी। बिजली की बंदिश से मुतादिद इलाके अंधेरे में डूब गए। लेस्को का शॉर्टफॉल 800 मेगावाट तक पहुंच गया। गैर एलानिया लोड शेडिंग के बायस सार्फिन को मुश्किलात का सामना।
यूरोप में कह जाने वाली गर्मी का राज। एक हफ्ते में शदीद गर्मी से हलाकतें 1500 से तजावुज कर गई। कई ममालिक जानलेवा गर्मी की पेट में। हुकाम के मुताबिक जर्मनी में शदीद दर्जा रात से सड़कों का असफाल्ट पिघल गया। फ्रांस, जर्मनी समेत कई यूरोपीय ममालिक में साथी मकामात भी बंद। यूरोप के बाद अमेरिका में भी शदीद गर्मी, दर्जा रात 35 से 40 डिग्री तक जाने की पेशगोई।
मुल्क में प्री मानसून बारिशों के पहले स्पेल की पेशगोई, NDMA ने अलर्ट जारी कर दिया। 6 जुलाई तक पंजाब, खैबर पख्तूनख्वा, गिलगित बल्तिस्तान, आज़ाद कश्मीर, शुमाली बलोचिस्तान और बालाई सिंध में आंधी, तेज हवाओं और गरज चमक के साथ बादल बरसेंगे। नशेबी इलाके ज़ेरे आब आने का खदशा। लाहौर, इस्लामाबाद, रावलपिंडी, मरी, गिलियात समेत दीगर अजला में बारिशें मुतवक्के। नेशनल डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट अथॉरिटी की मुमकिना मौसमी सूरत हाल से निपटने के लिए मुतल्लिका इदारों को चौकस रहने की हिदायत।
फीफा वर्ल्ड कप 2026 में बड़ा अपसेट। 4 मरतबा की चैंपियन टीम जर्मनी वर्ल्ड कप से बाहर होगी। पैराग्वे ने राउंड ऑफ 16 के लिए क्वालिफाई कर लिया। पैराग्वे ने जर्मनी को प्लेंटीज पर 4-3 से शिकस्त दी थी। मुकर्रर वक्त पर एक्स्ट्रा टाइम में मैच 1-1 से बराबर रहा। मराकश ने भी नीदरलैंड को पेनल्टी क्लिक्स पर 3-2 से हराकर पूरी क्वार्टर फाइनल में जगह बना ली। मुकर्रर वक्त तक दोनों टीमों के माबैन मैच 1-1 गोल से बराबर रहा। एक और मैच में ब्राजील ने जापान को 2-1 से हरा दिया। गैरन मार्टेली ने इंजरी टाइम में गोल करके टीम को जीत दिलवाई।
अस्सलामुअलैकुम, कोहिनूर न्यूज़ के साथ मैं हूं अब्दुर्रहमान।
मैं हूं सबरीन अख्तर। हेडलाइंस आपने जानी। बुलेटिन का बाकायदा आगाज करेंगे शॉर्ट ब्रेक के बाद।
हमारे साथ रहिए।
हर लम्हा कीमती है। एम्बुलेंस को फौरी रास्ता देना किसी की जान बचा सकता है। चंद लम्हों की ताखीर किसी की जान ले सकती है।
आप रास्ता देकर एक जान बचा सकते हैं।
जिम्मेदार शहरी हमेशा इमरजेंसी गाड़ी को तरजीह देते हैं। बरवक्त पहुंचने से इलाज के इम्कानात कई गुना बढ़ जाते हैं। आपका एक दुरुस्त फैसला किसी खानदान की खुशियां बचा सकता है। एम्बुलेंस को रास्ता दें, क्योंकि जिंदगी का हर लम्हा कीमती है। लबलबा हमारे जिस्म में इंसुलिन बनाता है, जो खून में शुगर को मुतवाजिन रखने में अहम किरदार अदा करती है। जब लबलबा मुनासिब मिकदार में इंसुलिन बनाना छोड़ देता है या जिस्म इंसुलिन को मौसर अंदाज में इस्तेमाल नहीं कर पाता, तो खून में शुगर बढ़ जाती है और यही कैफियत ज़ियाबेतिस कहलाती है।
शुगर एक ऐसी बीमारी है जो खामोशी से जिस्म के मुख्तलिफ आज़ा को मुतासिर करती है। बरवक्त तशखीस, एहतियात और सेहतमंद तर्ज ज़िंदगी इख्तियार करके इसके खतरनाक असरात से काफ़ी हद तक बचा जा सकता है।
शुगर खामोशी से दिल, गुर्दों, आंखों और आसाब को मुतासिर करती रहती है। इसीलिए बरवक्त मुआयना और एहतियात इंतहाई जरूरी है। अगर शुगर पर बरवक्त काबू ना पाया जाए तो ये दिल, गुर्दों, आंखों और आसाब को शदीद नुकसान पहुंचा सकती है। सेहतमंद ग़िज़ा, रोजाना वर्जिश और मुनासिब वजन ज़ियाबेतिस से बचाव और बेहतर सेहत की बुनियाद हैं। बाकायदगी से शुगर टेस्ट करवाना ज़ियाबेतिस की बरवक्त तशखीस और मुअस्सर इलाज में अहम किरदार अदा करता है। बरवक्त तशखीस और डॉक्टर की हिदायत पर अमल शुगर की पेचीदगियों से बचाने और सेहतमंद जिंदगी गुजारने में मदद देता है। आज से ही सेहतमंद आदात अपनाएं, बाकायदा मुआयना करवाएं और शुगर से महफूज, खुशहाल और तवाना जिंदगी गुजारें।
गम की तफहीम का पेचीदा अमल जारी है। घूमता फिरता हूँ सड़कों पे गजल जारी है। घूमता फिरता हूँ सड़कों पे गजल जारी है। ये ना हो दिल में कोई शक्ल पुरानी ना रहे। ये ना हो दिल में कोई शक्ल पुरानी ना रहे। जितनी तेजी से यहाँ नक्लो हमल जारी है। और मैं ना कहता था तुझे ऐ मेरे मरने वाले। मैं ना कहता था तुझे ऐ मेरे मरने वाले। अमन की बात ना कर, जंगो जदल जारी है। उसने लिखा है कि मुश्किल है हमारा मिलना। यानी आइन में फिर रद्दो बदल जारी है।
वालिदैन अल्लाह ताला की वो अजीम नेमत हैं, उनकी खिदमत, इज्जत और फरमा बरदारे ही दुनिया व आखिरत की कामयाबी का रास्ता है। उन्होंने अपनी ख्वाहिशात कुर्बान करके हमारी हर जरूरत पूरी की। उनकी कुर्बानियों को हमेशा याद रखना हमारी जिम्मेदारी है। वालिदैन से हमेशा अदब और नरमी से बात करें। ये हमारी बेहतरीन तरबियत और आला अखलाक की पहचान है। वालिदैन की खिदमत मोहब्बत, एहतराम और शुक्रगुजारी का सबसे खूबसूरत इजहार है। उनकी खिदमत में ही दुनिया की खुशी और आखिरत की कामयाबी पोशीदा है।
वालिदैन की दुआएं इंसान के लिए सबसे कीमती सरमाया हैं। में सुकून, कामयाबी और अल्लाह ताला की रहमत नसीब होती है। जिस तरह वालिदैन ने बचपन से जवानी तक हर कदम पर हमारा साथ दिया, बढ़ापे में उनका सहारा बनना हमारी मोहब्बत, एहतराम और जिम्मेदारी का बेहतरीन इजहार है। आइए अहद करें कि हम अपने वालिदैन का एहतराम करेंगे, उनकी खिदमत करेंगे और उनकी दुआओं को अपनी जिंदगी का सरमाया बनाएंगे।
तालीम हर बच्चे का बुनियादी हक है। एक रोशन मुस्तकबिल की बुनियाद स्कूल से ही रखी जाती है। तालीम सिर्फ चंद बच्चों के लिए नहीं, बल्कि हर बच्चे का बुनियादी हक है।
अभी आपको बराह रास्त इस्लामाबाद लिए चलेंगे, जहां सिंध तास मुआहदे की तकरीब जारी।
And the eastern rivers were given completely to India, and for right or wrong reasons, but that's how the treaty stands. So now the intention seems to have completely changed. We'll talk about it a little more. I'll just briefly, can you run there are basically 12 articles of the treaty. One, first of course, is the definitions, and second is the eastern rivers, which are all with India. The western rivers, which is the main question, it allots western rivers to Pakistan. India is allowed restricted use of water under strict limits. We'll talk about it, because we have to be real. We're in a real situation here. And then the replacement works, Pakistan was to build the replacement works for the eastern river canals. The eastern river canals were not being fed now from the eastern rivers, that is Ravi, Beas and Satluj. They were to be fed from the western rivers, and the link canals and the headworks and the entire system was created after this treaty was done. And a lot of financial help and support came from all over the world. And let me also tell you, at that time, let's not take everything away from what Mr. Modi is doing from the previous Indian administrations, because they upheld the treaty. Under difficult situations also, the treaty was upheld. So Indians also paid for replacement works, which was part of the treaty, apart from others. The financial provisions we have already talked about, fund replacement works in Pakistan. This was done by the World Bank, this is done by the United States, this is done by India also. And exchange of data, it has been violated. This is the first serious violation which has started a long time back. And this is a very serious question. Next, please. Permanent and this Water Commission, they were to meet on a yearly basis. This is the main place where they were to talk to each other and resolve issues which used to come up on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. This is not happening. This is a serious violation of the treaty. It has not happened in May 2020 or April 2020. It is happening before that time. So the intention was very clear from the Indian side, or the malintention, so to say. So dispute settlement, it's a three-layered process. It has already been explained. First, it is to be negotiated by the Indus Water Commissions. If there's a problem, it is to be taken to the technical problem, neutral experts, and if the legal advice is to be taken, then the court of arbitration. India has run out from there as well, because they don't have a legal ground to stand on. Emergency provisions, those have already exhausted, that time is gone. That was to be done in 1965. And the general provisions, this is a very important provision. It does not impinge upon any territorial claims. because the waters that come to Pakistan emanate from China in the Tibetan plain, run through Indian-occupied Kashmir, which is a disputed territory. So by a very serious legal definition, India is not an upper riparian, and then they enter Pakistan from there. Obviously, that provision is a very important provision which we cannot ignore, and this is very important thing which, once somebody holds a treaty in abeyance or abrogates the treaty, would mean something more for Pakistan than just the waters. Final provision, of course, is a treaty cannot be modified without mutual agreement, and that India has already done. So, in my opinion, the treaty has been violated grossly. And it is one of the most serious national security threats that Pakistan has faced since its inception. Next, please. Now, this is what IWT allows to India. It allows domestic use of water on the western rivers. It allows non-consumptive use, that the water cannot be consumed beyond a certain limit. Hydro power generation through run-of-the-river projects with specific design constraints, which means India should not develop a system by which it can regulate the flow of waters according to its will and wish. That is the fundamental argument in this. And then IWT caps the cumulative storage of water over 3 western rivers, and there is 3.6 million acre-feet of water. And this is important to note. And while Chenab, IWT allows 1.7 million acre-feet of storage without disrupting the flows of waters. That is the caveat. So basically the restrictions were designed to prevent India to manipulate the river flows against Pakistan. India is violating this. Consistently it is moving in the direction where it can gain control over the flows. Next, please. Then the strategic rupture took place. It was happening by design that was going on for quite some time. India used the statements you have already heard from various Indian ministers and the Prime Minister in the Indian intent of going away from the treaty. It was basically part of a strategy that India has adopted for the last 10 years. Let's not be mistaken. It is not an isolated incident. Pahalgam was used as a trigger. There is no evidence that Pahalgam was done by anybody. Even if it was done, it is to be treated in a very different way in the international system and bilateral between the two states. So it is, you have to see this abeyance in a larger construct, which is an indirect strategy which India has adopted, at least for the last 10 years, very openly. It is to isolate and weaken Pakistan. Part of this is the proxy wars which are happening in Pakistan. Part of it was economic thing, part of it was the narrative thing, the cognitive domain, put Pakistan in bad light around the world. So this was in the larger construct, things were happening, and hence abeyance of this treaty. There were, however, important thing to note that there was a discussion in India before that also. There were 2 schools of thought. One was talking about that things have changed, climate change and demography and others, and therefore there has to be a cooperative model with Pakistan on which modification of the treaty is to be done. That model is not a bad model of discussion, but the other was, which was saying right from the start, that India, more water was given to Pakistan and this treaty has been unfair to India and all. But then the policy of Mr. Modi and his government to indirectly put pressure on Pakistan or directly put pressure on Pakistan, combine this with the state action. Quickly, what is the situation on the hydro infrastructure on the western rivers, which are the rivers of concern for Pakistan? Next, please. River Indus, there are 2 projects which have been completed. The third one is proposed, and these projects have minimal storage capacity and has a minimal impact on the water flows. So therefore these projects, Pakistan has not really talked about these projects to anybody because these fall within the treaty system. Jhelum, there are 5 projects, out of which 4 projects have been completed. The 5th project is underway. the only project which bothered Pakistan is the Kishan Ganga Dam, which is restricting the flows to a Pakistani hydro project, which is Neelam Jhelum project. Otherwise, so far, the Indian capacity or the system that they have is not to interrupt with the flows of Jhelum waters. Next, please. The real concern, the real thing is Chenab. Most of the Indian hydropower projects are concentrated here. Currently, there are 4 projects which have combined capacity. These are operationalized projects, 4 projects. They have a combined capacity of 0.376 million acre feet of storage. There are 5 projects which are under construction, and by 2029 those will be completed. Chenab-Beas link canal will divert, now this is a very serious violation, divert waters from Chenab to Beas, which is from a western river to the eastern rivers. And India has planned another 13 projects beyond 2030 or 2035. And that is the serious concern that we are talking about. So quickly, the next slide, please. The impact assessment. This is the impact assessment. They've accelerated all their projects. The cascade integration. This is the serious thing. The projects on Chenab, I'm talking about the Chenab. Now, there are a number of projects on Chenab. If one water flow is managed at one, is released in a calibrated way to the other, is managed there, and so on and so forth, when it reaches Pakistan, you almost can have total control over the flow of the water. And you can release the water according to your wish and will, and can use it for coercion, which forms a very serious threat to Pakistan's national security. Next, please. So this is by about the second last slide I have very quickly. These are the 5-pillar strategy, in my humble opinion, that Pakistan should adopt. First is obviously IWT has to be kept alive at all costs. And therefore, all international legal discourses have to be fully activated. We have to remove dependence on Indian data. That does not take responsibility from India to not provide us data, but we have to become self-reliant also by creating a hydrological intelligence cell. And I repeat again, that does not mean that India is absolved of what India is doing, which is illegal and immoral by any stretch of imagination. But we need to create our own hydrological intelligence cell. Pakistan will be able to see early, plan early, and respond early. We have to build our internal buffers, because all these have been discussed before. There are dams, there are headworks, which need to be now fast-tracked. Canal reforms, groundwater, I think Mr. Bilawal Bhutto talked about it, and groundwater recharge. So this is not just the requirement because what India has done, this is the requirement of the scarcity of water, the climate change that is affecting waters in Pakistan. We have to also counter the panic. It is a serious situation, but it is not a situation of... We understand that what India can do with these rivers and what India cannot in the public communication also. Last but not the least, there are red lines, and that is red lines without reckless escalation. So, but India's question is to be deterred, and the crisis is to be controlled. And we have the means to do it. Next slide, please. Next, because this is going to be... These are the 3 fundamental things. It is a serious threat. The buildup of the Indians on the river Chenab is a serious threat to Pakistan's national security, goes without saying. Pakistan's strongest argument is not that India can dry our rivers. The strongest argument is that an upper riparian state is trying to convert a functioning water treaty into a political punishment tool. If this becomes a precedent, it will no longer be a problem of South Asia. I thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant General. Now we'll turn on to our final speaker for this panel, Ms. Lori A. Watkins, who's an author and global policy expert from the United States of America. And I believe she's also taking the podium.
I want to start with something I think we all know, but always don't say plainly. The Indus Waters Treaty is one of the genuine success stories of international diplomacy. It was built to do something extraordinarily hard: give two countries that have fought multiple wars a legal and technical framework for sharing something they both need to survive. And for over 60 years, it worked. What I've been asked to look at this afternoon is the broader picture: how river treaties around the world are designed to prevent conflict, what makes their institutions strong or fragile, and what the global framework of water law has to say about where we are right now. And I think when you look at the comparative record, the Danube, the Mekong, the Nile, the picture is actually clarifying, not discouraging, because it tells us very precisely what works, what's at risk, and what needs to be protected. The International Commission for the Protection of the Danube River, the ICPDR, spans 15 parties, including countries that were on opposite sides of the Cold War. Its legal foundation in the 1994 Danube River Protection Convention. And here's the telling detail. That convention includes a small dispute settlement mechanism. It has never once had to be used. Not because there are no tensions, there are, but because the technical working groups meet regularly, they share data, and resolve differences before they become political crises. That is exactly what institutional conflict prevention looks like when it's working. The Mekong tells a more cautionary story. Scholars studying that basin have found explicitly that withholding hydrological data can itself incite regional conflict, that controlling data becomes a political weapon. The Mekong River Commission established a formal data sharing procedures back in 2001, but implementation remained weak for years. It wasn't until 2020 that an agreement was reached with China to share river level data twice daily and year-round. The lesson is direct. When the flow of information stops, trust erodes, and the space for miscalculation grows. Pakistan has written to India 3 times, twice in 2025 and again in May of 2026, about abnormal and abrupt flow variations on the Chenab. That is not a procedural complaint. That is a downstream country losing visibility into what is happening upstream. The Mekong experience tells us exactly how dangerous that is. The Nile Basin Cooperative Framework Agreement, which finally entered into force in 2024, drew almost word for word on the 1997 UN Watercourses Convention, codifying the principle of equitable and reasonable use, the obligation not to cause significant harm, and mandatory data exchange. The Nile case shows us something important. Even when bilateral arrangements fracture, customary international law remains as the underlying framework. States cannot simply exit their obligations by declaring a treaty suspended. The law does not work that way. The 1997 UN Watercourses Convention is the authoritative global framework on shared rivers. Its core principles: equitable use, no significant harm, prior notification before major upstream actions, and regular data exchange. These are not just treaty obligations for the countries that signed it. They reflect customary international law, which is binding on all states regardless of signature. The International Court of Justice confirmed this in the Gobchek-Kavel Naj Marosh case, a dispute fittingly over suspended treaty on the Danube. The court held that customary water law obligations persist even when one party claims a treaty has been suspended. You cannot unilaterally walk away from the legal framework simply by announcing that you have. The Permanent Court of Arbitration, the PCA, made that directly relevant to the Indus Basin. In its June 2025 supplemental award, the court found that India's declaration of abeyance does not end the tribunal's jurisdiction. The treaty's dispute resolution architecture, the very machinery built to prevent escalation, continues to function. And in May of 2026, the court issued an award on the question of maximum pondage that substantively affirmed limits on upstream water control. India has rejected both. But rejection is not the same as nullification. An arbitral award does not disappear when a party calls it illegal. Paktan Soon Serwanda treaties must be performed in good faith. You heard another speaker say that earlier today. This is not a polite aspiration. It is the foundation on which the entire system of international agreements rests. When it is eroded in one place, the consequences reach far beyond that basin. Against that comparative backdrop, I want to say something clearly. The Permanent Indus Commission is, by any global standard, a remarkable institution. Senior engineers with diplomatic standing, a mandatory meeting schedule, inspection rights, a tiered dispute ladder, commission to neutral expert to court arbitration that is specifically designed to catch problems at the lowest possible levels before they climb. The academic literature on the Commission notes that it resolved the vast majority of questions brought to it across 6 decades, through 3 wars, military standoffs, and sustained political tension. No other bilateral water commission has been stress-tested that way and survived. That is an institution worth protecting. But here's what the Danube, Mekong, and Nile all show us consistently. Commissions prevent conflict, not primarily by resolving legal disputes. They prevent conflict by maintaining contact. Regular meetings build familiarity. Joint inspections create shared technical understanding. Data exchange removes the information gaps that feed political suspicion. When that contact is severed, when inspections are refused, when data goes dark, when commission meetings lapse, the buffer disappears, and the downstream consequences, in the most literal sense, fall on Pakistan. The seminar documentation for today identifies exactly that pattern on the Indus. Reduced cooperation on inspections, incomplete data exchange, erosion of regular commission engagement. I want to be direct about what the comparative record says. That sequence is not a diplomatic inconvenience. It is the early warning signal that the institutional safeguards are in fact failing. Based on what the comparative record shows, I'd like to offer 4 things that the international community and this convention should be pressing for. Restore commission engagement unconditionally. The Permanent Indus Commission must meet. Its mandate is not contingent on the state of political relations. That is the entire point and reason for building a technical institution. The meeting schedule is a legal obligation, not a diplomatic favor. Mandate real time for data showing all flow variations. Pakistan's documented concerns about the Chenab are precisely the kind of issue the Commission exists to address. The data must flow, and it must flow in both directions, transparently. Respect the arbitral process. The Court of Arbitration has jurisdiction. Its awards are valid, A state that disagrees with a tribunal's competence has legal avenues to contest that. But non-participation and rejection do not make the awards just disappear. The international community should say so clearly. Affirm that abeyance has no basis in international water law, the 1997 Watercourses Convention, the ICJ, and the PCA have all pointed in exactly the same direction. Unilateral suspension of a treaty's obligations is not a recognized legal act under the framework governed by shared watercourses. I want to close with this. The Indus Waters Treaty matters beyond the Indus Basin. It is one of the clearest demonstrations in history that international institutions can manage water conflict even between adversaries. That proof of concept matters to every shared river basin in the world, and there are 310 of them. What is happening right now is not just a bilateral dispute. It is a test of whether treaty-based cooperation can be abandoned unilaterally when it becomes politically inconvenient, and whether the international community will say anything about it. The institutions that were built to keep the water from becoming a cause of war must be allowed to function. For 240 million people whose lives depend on the Indus, there is no alternative. Thank you.
Should seriously consider acceding to the UN Water Course Convention of 1997. I'm Dr. Anjum from climate program of IRS. My question is for Ms. Laurie Watkins. Actually, I believe that Pakistan should seriously consider acceding to the UN Water Course Convention of 1997 and UN ECE Water Convention of 1992. To strengthen its legal standing and to reinforce transboundary water governance, and it will also complement Indus Water Treaty's effective implementation. So what's your opinion about opting for this approach, and what do you think would be tangible diplomatic and legal benefits of this accession? Thank you.
Well, I hope that I went into those specifics. I listed those 4 areas, but I think one of the things that I'm not seeing right now is the rest of the international community stepping up, right? They need to step up and they need to speak up as well. And every panelist that's been here today has said that we are all in this together. I don't consider this just a Pakistan-India issue. I live in America. I'm here because this is important. And water being used as a weapon is catastrophic. It is literally life and death for people, and that's what I hope people focus on. Is that fact, because there are conflicts going on all around the world. There is a loss of fuel, there is a loss of things that provide, that we need to have energy to pump water filtration systems, etc. So the fact, if you don't have water but you also don't have fuel because of another conflict that's happening at the same time, it's absolutely a recipe for disaster. So I do feel globally, if we're going to maintain global order, that we all are in this together, and we all need to speak up for one another and be good partners. Thank you.
Okay, any other question? Okay, the gentleman in the front row.
Thank you so much. My name is Muhammad Ali. I'm a policy analyst. My question is aimed at our Chinese friend, Professor Victor Gao. You mentioned something very profound when you chose your words carefully by mentioning India as a middle riparian, not the upper riparian, which I understand as stressing the point that actually India starts from China. So in that context, I also appreciate when you express solidarity and support for Pakistan's territorial integrity and national security. So in tangible terms, what should Pakistan expect, both in terms of diplomatic, legal, and strategic support from Beijing? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I made the comments in my personal capacity. I think the fact that India is not the real upstream country is very significant, because if China and Pakistan cooperate, and I hope they will, find the will and the commitment to cooperate, we can, in addition to whatever that needs to be done to straighten out all the provisions in the IWT treaty itself, create a situation where India may be deterred from playing rough against Pakistan. Now, how that can be done technically, what can be lined up between China, the real upstream country, and Pakistan, the real downstream country, together, vis-a-vis the midstream country, if I may say so, that is the key. I think it would require a lot of wisdom and technical expertise to find out what exactly can be done. Now, further, between China and India, China is always on the upstream, not only as far as India's river, Indus River is concerned, Brahmaputra, for example, and quite a few others flowing from the Himalayas, sometimes through Nepal, Bhutan, further down into India. So I think some message can be prepared to inform India that you should not play rough against a downstream country like Pakistan, which happens to be an ironclad friend of China, and there is tremendous amount of goodwill in my country towards the people here in Pakistan, and I think the Chinese government may also decide not to spare any resources to make sure that Pakistan is not being played rough by the midstream country. Now, how exactly things can be lined up so that India can be deterred from doing the wrong thing as far as, this IWT clauses are concerned, that's the key. I'm happy to, have a private chat with you if you are interested to see what exactly can be done. So my point is simple. Looking at the IWT itself is important, and I support whatever that can be done correctly, properly within that framework. But my concern is that if India has already decided to play rough against Pakistan, simply going through the framework and the parameters of the treaty itself may not solve the problem. in a timely manner, and while nothing should be stopped in this direction, some alternative options probably need to be prepared as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gao, in your very personal capacity, as you always love to say, for issuing those, we could call them alternate warning system to our neighbor by an ironclad friend. Might be very useful at this time. I think we have time for one last question, and we'd ask the lady in the second row.
Assalamu alaikum. So my name is Samaa Sukhera, and my question is from General Amir. So as you've been on different key appointments and you know all the strategic ins and outs and pros and cons of India, Pakistan both, so you still think that Indus Water Treaty still fits for purpose in the era of climate change, or it still needs a serious renegotiation? Thank you.
Okay. This question should have been better asked from climate experts and the technical experts, but the fact remains that this was not the Indian logic to hold the treaty in abeyance. This was not the logic which was used by India to start violating the treaty even before April 25. Their logic is simple. It is the logic which is born out of a coercive strategy which has been part of India's game for last many years. However, that be on one side, if there is we all know that there are changes in the climate, there are glacial melts, there, lots of other things have changed, demographies have also altered, and water usage has also changed. Indus Water Commission was always there. They stopped meeting a long time back before April 25 with the Indus Commissioner. All these things could have been together in good faith by the researchers, by the scientists, should have been discussed to frame the broader parameters within which the climate change and all of the changes could fit in. And then the treaty had to, because this is a very gold standard treaty, how the treaty is to be modified or kind of addendum is to be attached with the treaty, that it is in the benefit of the people of both states. But that's not the good faith so far. I'm sure there are very empowered people from the government who are sitting here. I don't think so Pakistan has ever hesitated to talk about the treaty in good faith. But if that is the intention, so far that intention has not surfaced from the present government. It is unilateral actions that they have taken, starting not only from, because I said that it is a part of a wider construct. I'm repeating the same again. What happened on 5th of May 2019, unilaterally trying to change the status of Kashmir, although they can't do it because there are 3-4 parties, international community also part of the dispute, they can't do it. But they try to do it. And they are supporting a lot of other actions against Pakistan which are very seriously harmful to the interests of Pakistan and the people of Pakistan, particularly in the form of proxies and others. In that set, what happened in May or April 2025, they went ahead with a military action against Pakistan. And on the very next day when this happened, Pahalgam happened, they announced the treaty to be held in abeyance, which clear, and there is no evidence of Pakistan's involvement in that kind of an action in Pahalgam and all. So it seems kind of preconceived actions to corner Pakistan, which obviously Pakistan is not going to do. So let's preserve the treaty first and then talk about what has materially changed in terms of climate and other things.
Thank you to our panelists and to our audience for taking part. Remarks.
Thank you. Once again, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to everyone, and let me acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister. This is absolutely so much has been said and in some ways also repeated in terms of what the Indus Water Treaty is, what's happening right now, what are the policy options for Pakistan, that I'm not going to try and repeat them. I'm just going to try and, perhaps in the next 7 minutes, try and look at why a country like India, which was perhaps of late, for the last many decades, vying for a seat in the Security Council, wanting to be the maker of rules in the world, in the remade world order, has decided to be the breaker of rules. What is the environment that is enabling a country to be able to get away with the stated objective of murdering, of killing a civilization, and not a peep, not a mutter, not a murmur, not a law-abiding international world coming to its defense? And, there's an adage that what you do to others will eventually happen to you. So if you're not there to protect when it happens to you, the precedent-setting role of what India is up to, not only in this, not only in what it calls holding in abeyance a treaty which, by the way of the treaty, cannot be held in abeyance. So before, without even going into what else is in play, or the only three issues that I want to bring your attention to, I'm going to start with reading Article 12 of the Indus Water Treaty, because sometimes I find that we keep on analyzing things without really going into how effective, or what do the treaties in their essence, or any treaty in its own essence actually says. So this I read many years back, and I was like, after this, which country which wants to still function in the world as not a rogue state, but as a country which deserves a seat, forget the Security Council, but even the General Assembly, would ever be able to think it can walk itself out of a treaty like this? And Article 12 says, the provisions of this treaty may from time to time be modified by a duly ratified treaty concluded for that purpose between the two governments. And this kind of answers the question that was asked also over here, that should we renegotiate a treaty? You never renegotiate you don't end something before you have something better renegotiated. So right now, I think even to talk about anything like that would be, I think, a bit immature, if I could say that. And for the provision, I'm again quoting the Indus Water Treaty, the provisions of this treaty, this is interesting, or the provisions of this treaty as modified under the provisions of paragraph 3 shall continue in force until terminated by a duly ratified treaty concluded for that purpose between the two governments. So after this, if there ifs, buts, abeyances, held in, suspension, any type of nomenclature, literature, fancy language, grammar, or any other language can be thought of, can be coughed up, can be vomited. But it doesn't change the fact that a country which goes against a treaty that it signed no less than by one of the founders of independent India, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Pakistan's president on the 19th of September 1960, that no country which wants to function in the world as forget law-abiding, as a reasonable country would ever think of doing that. So then, the question that comes to our mind is, how is India able to get away with it? It is because of the state of the world. It is because whatever you call it, whether you call it rupture, whether you call it reordering of the world, whether you call it a breakdown of the world order, whether you call it normalization of the impossible, but we all know that the architects of the previous order currently are no more the architects of the previous order, and as it was created, in some ways have not been able to hold the positions that made them the architects. And we also know that the architects of the new order are likely to not emerge from the architects of the previous order. So right now, everybody is in a flux. And there is no one who's here to preserve the international common goods, or what we call the global goods. Preserving treaties, abiding by international law, are common goods. Because today it is Pakistan's water, tomorrow